Hello everybody, I am here with my mom, Grandmaster Pia Cramling, and we are going to be doing a round one recap of the candidates, which is the most important chess tournament of the year pretty much.
Absolutely, because the winner of the candidates is going to be the challenger of the world champion Magnus Carlsen next year. So it's absolutely the most important tournament of the year.
Because one of these people that are playing in the candidates, they might become the future world chess champion.
Absolutely. They just have to beat Magnus Carlsen.
They just have to beat Magnus. And we have 8 really fun players participating this year. The lineup is absolutely amazing. We have Firouzja, who is an 18-year-old. Well, actually, today's his birthday.
Today is his birthday.
He's turning 19. I am just kidding. He's 19 years old now. We have Firouzja, a very young player, a huge talent. We have Ding Liren, who is the second highest rated chess player in the world, who at one point had a streak of not losing a single game in 100 games. We have Richard Rapport, who is
He's a very creative player.
Very creative player.
Yes, absolutely. And when you see his games, you can almost know that it's Rapport playing because he has a unique style of playing.
For sure, absolutely. And speaking of creative players, there's also Duda, who is another very creative player, right?
Yes, absolutely. And he's also one of those who has been coming. He's quite young also.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then we also have Nepo, who I think that a lot of you know, Ian Nepomniachtchi. He was the challenger last year. He won the candidates, and last year he played against Magnus Carlsen, and now this year he's here for revenge. And then after him, we have Fabiano Caruana, who has also won the candidates and played against Magnus Carlsen, took it to tie breaks in that championship match. Now he's back here. He's a very experienced player. He's back here, also trying to win again and play him. And then we have the person everybody knows, Hikaru Nakamura. I mean, amazing story on how he got to the candidates, streamer, YouTuber, an amazing chess player, highest blitz player in the world, highest rated blitz player in the world. And then we have radjabov as well, who was the FIDE nominated candidate this year. So we have a huge lineup. Mom, do you want to talk a little bit about the format very quickly?
The format is, there are 8 players. They will play against each other with white and black, and they are playing classical chess. So they are quite long games. They get for the first 40 moves, they get 2 hours. After that, they get 1 hour for the next 20 moves. And after move 61, they will get 15 minutes. And from that moment, they will also get 30 seconds per move. So they will have extra time. And the idea with this is that if you have a winning position, you will always have time to win it.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's interesting that they don't go for those 30 extra seconds the whole time. So in the beginning of the game, there is no increment basically for the first 40 moves. So we're gonna jump into the game. Round 1 was amazing, absolutely amazing. I mean, it was great.
It was really great. It was fantastic games. It was such an entertainment to see the games. And I'm loving to get through these games together with you.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do this. So the first game that we're going to be looking at was the game between Ding Liren and Ian Nepomniachtchi. Now, Ding Liren, he has been one of the favorites for a lot of people. So he's one of the favorites. A lot of people thought that, he could win the whole thing. So this was a very interesting game to see, the up-and-coming Ding Liren with the last year's challenger, Ian Nepomniachtchi.
Absolutely. And also because Ding Liren is the one who is the highest rated. And also he's one of the players I think Magnus Carlsen has had problem with before, at least before. So if he would become the challenger, it would be very tough match also for the world champion.
For sure, absolutely. So we're gonna go ahead and start. So c4 was played by Ding Liren.
Yeah, and he can play lots of different moves. When you go c4, it's not the most common moves, but he wanted to avoid some other lines, and that's why he went for c4.
Yeah. And then Jan responded with e5.
Yeah, that's one of the main response for black, and it's very logical. Put the pawn in the center, you get make it easier for you to develop afterwards. So e5 is actually maybe the main move after c4.
So g3 was played to fiancare the bishop.
Yeah, that's logical. And sometimes you don't go out with a knight because maybe black can play. If you go knight c3, black can play bishop b4 and a little bit thinking of taking the c3 to give you a double pawn. So that's why some players like to play g3 first. You're a little bit waiting with developing the knight on the queen side. And now c6, and this a little bit have become fashion now lately. And we can see that this is now becoming a reverse Sicilian. It's almost like
a reverse Alapin?
A reverse Alapin, because Alapin is when you play c3 against the Sicilian.
Yeah.
So this is what we're seeing here, and this has become very, very interesting, because black wants to put the pawn in the center, but if white takes, black wants to take back with the pawn to have lots of pawn in the center. And white will challenge the center. You can do it in different ways, and we will see what white choose here.
So knight f3 was played before bishop g2 to attack the pawn, I suppose?
Yeah, that's important. You have to attack the center, so black doesn't develop his pawn center and quietly and he get all the pawns in the center. White has to challenge it. And so now black, we see what will happen. And black needs to move the pawn forward, and then afterwards, white will attack this pawn. So this is a little bit the strategy. White is saying, please come, attack me with your pawns, and then I'm going to attack you. And black say, thank you, I'm taking a lot of space here in the center.
So knight d4 and d5.
Yes, you need to push the pawn forward. You're defending e4, but you're also opening up for your pieces to be developed. So this is very logical. And now black is planning c5. So white has to do something about this threat c5 and d4.
And that is why white takes on d5.
Yeah, and you take with the queen because there's not time enough to take with the pawn. If you take with the pawn, you can see white will play actually d3 first here. Now you will just start attacking this pawn on e4. You have a grip on the square d4. And so this is a little bit more pleasant for white. So black has to play quickly. And when you're getting out with the queen, we say you shouldn't go out with the queen quickly, but you are also attacking the knight. You're winning some time.
Yeah, here you're winning some time. Because I suppose that after d3, if pawn takes and d3, if white is able to take over here, then this pawn on e4 is going to become quite a weakness, because you never really want to play f5, I suppose, because of the light squares.
Yeah.
And if you take here and queen takes, this is going to become an isolated pawn. So this pawn is going to become quite weak.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a little bit like a dream position for white. Yeah. You have your knight on d4, you can attack d5, and you will have a slight plus, but a very pleasant slight plus where black has more problems to create counterplay.
Absolutely. So that was the reason for queen takes d5. And then knight c2 was played, and I guess he's trying to reroute the knight?
Yeah, absolutely. So the knight on c2, the knight is the best route for the knight, because the knight is heading for e3. After that, you can go to c4. And normally, if you have a knight on c4, it's a very good square for a knight and lots of positions, because there you're looking at the squares in the centers. It's just standing very, very well there. So that's why knight c2 was the normal move, because it has the best future from there.
Yeah, and sometimes you're also looking towards the queen side, I guess, too.
Yeah.
So the knight on c4 can look at different parts of the board at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
So knight f6, knight c3, kicking away the queen.
Absolutely, yes. And yeah, so this is normal developing moves. White got this knight c3, but black has the queen in the center, and yes, defending e4 also, which is very important.
Yeah. Knight a6. So he decides to take this path for the knight.
Yeah, it might look a little bit strange, but the knight is heading for c5, where it will defend e4. And if you go to d7, it would actually block the bishop.
Yeah.
So it's a more flexible move, because you might after that want to develop the bishop before you put the knight on c5. So that's why you put it on the rim. But the knight is just going to a very good square, and that's c5.
Yeah, and then castles, bishop e7. Black is developing, I mean.
Yeah.
And now knight e3. So now we see the knight starting to reroute itself.
Yeah, and it's of course logical. You develop your king side first, you put your king in safety, and then you are starting to put your pieces on better squares.
Castles, A3?
Yeah, A3 is a little bit like sometimes you want to play queen C2, you don't want to be annoyed by knight before, but it's also that white is planning to play B4 because if you see this black square bishop, you have to get it out. And with the pawn on D2, that's the way you have to fianchetto the bishop to B2.
Yeah.
And because you don't want to move the D pawn, your plan is to attack E4. You don't want to let black exchange this pawn for one of your center pawns.
Yeah, so you want to put the bishop on B2. So rook E8 and B4, and here we start seeing Dingleren trying to put the bishop over here. Knight G4, so Nepo actually wants to exchange this knight for the one on E3.
Yeah, and this is actually the first move that surprised me because you are exchanging the knight on E3 and you are also leaving the pawn on E4 without sufficient defense. So I was, what is happening here? But black means that if you take it, you will get enough activity you will get enough activity. I think here would become a queen H5. Now there's a threatening mate on H2. You will have to take the knight. And the bishop goes back. And now there are some, let's see, there's some threat against, let's say we move the bishop back, bishop G2 to have it closer to the king, bishop F6. And now after bishop F6, you see we are planning to take a C3, but we are also planning to take on E2. And it's so difficult for maybe white to defend it. Maybe you can go F3 here. So I'm a little bit, I'm not sure. Yeah, this is probably what you have to play. And perhaps here, I'm not sure how much compensation black has. So maybe as bishop H3 or you move the bishop, you will go to rook D8. But these are the things that Nepo had planned. He had planned to give the pawn, and why didn't decide not to take it? And because there are some activity to compensate the pawn. Exactly how, I'm not sure.
Yeah. So. Do you think that this would have been a good idea for Dingleren to go for this?
I don't think so, because I think this is a well-known position where if you go for it, black will get compensation, absolutely. And this is why you can see that these top players, they will only take a pawn if they're sure they're not enough initiative, not enough compensation for the opponent.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they prefer to be active than instead of giving the initiative to opponent.
So bishop b2 was played instead of taking the pawn, and now queen h5 was played, which was an idea we saw before as well.
Yeah, exactly. And like now, so now black is forcing white to take on g4. And the idea, of course, is that you get your bishop to g4, you know, without very quickly, you're developing it quickly, and you are also taking away a defender of the king side. And we can see what will happen. It's again now, you take on g4, there's nothing else you can do.
There's h4.
There's h4.
Which is what happened.
Yeah, this is what happened.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm always, because for me, you know, when h4 came, I was like this.
Yeah, I remember that we were quite surprised when h4 was played.
Yeah, because I don't play this position. I never played with white or black. And to make a move like h4, you don't want it. But this is why black has been ready to give a pawn all the time, because he wanted to force this weakness. And weakness of a king side, it's not like black is going to mate a white immediately, but it's a serious weakness, and there's something black can play on during the game, during the whole game. And of course, pawns cannot go backwards, and sometimes you would wish to go back with it, but it's not possible. So white didn't want to help black to develop the piece. Instead, white make this weakness of the king side, and I was getting like this. Do you really do this? But he did, and of course, if he does, it's because it's fine to play this.
Of course. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So h4 was played and bishop f6, and this was the setup that you were mentioning before.
Yeah.
To pin this knight, this bishop is right here.
Yeah.
And activate the bishop.
Yeah, and now we see that now it's absolutely no possibility any longer to take on e4 because of the pin. So it's just that it doesn't work. Yes.
Yeah.
It doesn't work at all.
So queen c2, putting
Yeah.
some more pressure on e4.
Yes. And now finally black saw that white is threatening to take on e4. I will need to take on e3. But it was a little bit like a game. They were asking the other one, take my piece. No, you take my piece. And now here there's actually no real choice for white. In general, if the pawn was on h2, I would love to take with the f pawn because I wanted to open the f line. Maybe there could be some rook f4 attacking f5, or yes, rook f2, the other rook to f1, and I have this wonderful, beautiful line to play, to use for my rooks. But with a pawn on h4, you cannot do that because g3 is weak.
Yeah.
Black will just go and grab the pawn and just very, very quickly. So here you have to take back with the d pawn.
Yeah, because on h2 the pawn is defending on g3, but now this pawn would have no defender apart from the f2 pawn. So d takes e3 and bishop f5.
Yeah, so that was logical, but black needed to defend the pawn. The bishop comes out, now the rooks are connected, and black has actually developed all his pieces.
Yeah. Knight a4.
Yeah, knight a4. It could have been an idea actually to go rook b1 first, because if you go rook b1, black will have to put the queen on g6, and later on we will see why the queen is so well placed on h5. So it could have been an idea to a little bit force black to put the queen on g6, because it will be a little bit less aggressive there.
And the reason why we're forcing the queen to go to g6 is because now we're defending the bishop and attacking the pawn on e4.
Yes, but there is actually one idea. After you go queen to g6, now I'm seeing there is actually a threat here. Now we might threaten to play bishop h4, and after that, if you take with the pawn, we have queen h3. So
Bishop h3.
we have bishop h3, and there is a mate. So queen g6 would actually force white to play king h2. So this is not so. It's not
so clear.
It's not so clear.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, he opted for knight a4, which is defending the. Obviously, the bishop on b2 is still defended, but I guess he wants to go knight c5 at some point.
Yeah. No, actually, what happened? He wanted to regroup the knight, to put it on a better square, but he was more looking for getting the knight to c4.
Oh yeah, to do something like this.
Yeah, this is what happened.
So bishop takes b2, knight takes b2. Yeah, there we have the plan.
Yeah, because he wasn't so eager to go to knight c5. Maybe because of the changing of knights, it could be. And so that's why he thought that knight c4 it will become stronger there.
So knight c7 and then knight c4 and rook e6.
Yeah, rook e6 is a very important move because the rook is very good on the 6th line. It was also very important to stop white from playing knight d6. White was actually planning to go knight d6, which would threaten the bishop on f5. You will also planning to take on b7. So black needs to defend it. And the best way is actually the rook e6, because it's like a multifunction move. You are defending against what white was planning. This is always good to think of what does my opponent want to do. So, but black also has some idea to play against the king side. So the rook on the 6th can be a very good attacking piece. So that's why rook e6 was a very strong move. And also you have another idea. You want to use your rook on a8, and you are not interested to put the rook on the d line because you want to keep the rooks. If you would put the rook on the d line, white would actually be happy to change pieces, because the idea for white is maybe to change pieces, then after you would start attacking b7 with your knight, you will try to attack e4, and actually this would be no problem for white, absolutely. So black wants to keep the rooks, and with rook e6 now you will have the other rook going to e8, you will get more active and you will defend e4.
Rook fd1.
Yeah, that's logical. You put one rook to on the d1 on the d file, and we can see in this position white has one problem, and this is actually bishop on g2. You need to have the piece to defend the king side, otherwise it would be very, very lonely. You have only the king. You have only the bishop, but you cannot activate it. So it's a little bit like white is having a very, very passive piece on g2, because if you try to go on f3, you will create weaknesses on g3, on e3. It actually now it would even lose a piece because black takes there. So you have problems to use it.
Yeah,
like
so the bishop is right now completely inactive.
Yeah, and now with rook d1, the plan is again knight e6, and black has to stop it.
And that's why black goes knight d5.
Yeah, I don't know if white could play dramatical here to try to play something like b5, yes, to go something very, very dramatical, because we have this fantastic, beautiful knight on d5, but we have a way to attack it, not to attack the knight, but to attack the pawn, which is defending the knight.
Yeah.
And so maybe b5 could be an idea to go b5, take on c6, and then to attack c6. But perhaps white thinks that I don't want to attack c6, I want to attack b7, so we let the pawn stay on b7.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, because white went here and rook d4.
yeah, this is logical. You are putting more pressure on e4, you open up for double the rooks, and you're putting more pressure on the d line. Yeah, so this is a very logical move.
And black went for h6, and I remember that when h6 happened, we were a little... Well, there were so many possibilities, because I guess that g5 is always an idea here, right?
G5 is always an idea, and this is a move, but it's such a brutal move.
It is a brutal move, yeah.
Because what black wants to do is, black wants to take away the h pawn, then play rook h6, and then it would actually be a mate attack. It's very, very strong.
Yeah.
Because the problem white has with this double the e pawn is that you have very difficulties to get another piece to defend the king side. It's very, very difficult. You can't help the king with the knight. The knight is a fantastic defender. If we could put the knight on f4, for example, we could even, it would be a good defender. We could even maybe give exchange on d5 to put the knight on f4. There would not be any problem with the king. But we have only the bishop to defend. So g5 would open up, but if there will not be a mate attack, because it takes some time. You go g5, white takes, black takes back. You need to put the rook on the h line, you need to put the queen on the h line. Will white has time to create enough counterplay? And if white will do that, positionally, g5 is a very, very big weakness. It's something you don't want to do, because it's a serious weakness. You will have big problems in all kind of endgames because you have made this. So
because the pawns will be isolated then.
They will be isolated, yeah. So it's not a move you want to do if you're not sure it's really going to win the game.
So h6 was played.
Yeah, and I really like that move. I think it's just a fantastic move. First, a little bit strange, because there's where you want to put the rook.
Yeah.
Now you can't go the rook to h6 for attacking white. But what you do now, one is that we always want to not to have any background problems. The king can always run up if there will be some rook checks on the d line. But black is now playing to go g5, and if white takes, we take back with the pawn. And then we have rook h6 so much quicker, and the queen stands perfectly on h5. So I think that psychological to play against h6 was quite difficult for white, because now white realized there's a mate attack coming. And even if white now has an extra move, what are you going to do with it? You need to create something, but what? Because the d file is closed. You cannot help your king with another piece than with the one you have there. So the only thing I can see to do is try to take on d5. So I don't know if it would be possible now to go rook d1, and then actually if you go g5, I was wondering, can we take on g5? I want to see if we can take on g5. You take back, and now we take on d5. So you take, and I go rook takes, because now if the bishop moves to h7, let's see like this.
Yeah, because we wanted
we need to defend e4.
We need to defend e4.
The attack will not be dangerous. It's not enough to have the rook, because let's say now I will play maybe something like, maybe I go queen d2, I want to go queen d4, or maybe I will go knight d6 to put more pressure here. After rook h6, there will only be a check, and I can escape with king f1.
Yeah, because the bishop is holding his h1 square.
Yeah, but if you had the bishop to play with. You could play for a mate, but with the queen and rook lonely is not enough. So this is maybe the way I would have tried to make counterplay, to give an exchange on d5, just to disturb black in the plans of creating a king attack.
So queen d2 was played instead of rook a d1. I guess with the same idea of taking on d5.
It's the same idea, and the difference is that when you go, we have the queen is quite active. You're taking e4, and the rook on a1 is not playing. So I would have preferred to go with the rook to get one more piece active, and then we have all the pieces we can play with in the game. The g2 bishop is still passive, but it's attacking e4.
So, rook e8.
Yeah, and in this position, you're not so keen. I don't know what happened here.
White played king h2.
King h2, and maybe this is not what you should do. I don't know if we could go here for if you put back the king. The idea we can say the idea with king h2. And this actually is that if you go g5 now, you want to go rook h1, and if you take on h4, we go king g1. And after we take with the rook on h4, and now, white is so happy.
Yeah.
And we can see what a weakness black has created on his king side.
Now this king is weak.
Now this king is weak. And now, after the rook comes into the game, we can absolutely take on d5. We will have this beautiful square on h4 or f4. We will maybe win the e4 pawn. We have all our pieces playing. And this is just wonderful for white. But, of course, black will not allow this. So I don't know now if you can take on d5 here. If you would take to
instead of king h2.
Yeah, king h2. But if we go, I was just wondering, can we do that? I just want
take on
d5 here. We take, but it might be that yes, if you could play this position, and the idea is simply that if you go, my plan now is knight e6. This is my really threat to play, knight e6. If I get the exchange back, I'm completely fine in this position. I managed to open up for my rooks, and for my rook, which is left. And if you go like, if you take on e2, I just go knight e6, probably. Do I go knight e6? Or I'm not really sure what I would play here. Maybe I go... maybe I go bishop f1 and knight d6. I think that's fine. And after I go knight d6, and I will absolutely win back exchange. Yes, now we have knight d6. And
Can we take it though? Oh, maybe there's rook d8.
We have rook d8 here. Yeah, so this is maybe not right. Let's go. Yeah, we have rook d8 here. So, no, we play queen take f5. Everything is defended here. So, sorry, after bishop f1, we defend our knight. So you have to defend. We take here, and we have two pieces for the rooks. Now we are very happy.
Maybe there's rook takes rook f6.
Sorry. Yeah, you're right. This is not clear.
Okay, let's go back.
Well, let's go back. This is very, very long, but but it's possible that you can create counterplay. But White didn't think this was enough, but maybe this is actually what you have to do. You have to do it, and even you will get compensation. Will it be enough? That's the question, and White didn't believe so. And this is why I would have loved to play with the rook, because if I can take on d5 with the rook, I would defend e2, I will get all of my pieces, and then knight d6 was absolutely going to be a threat.
So queen d2, rook e8, king h2, and then bishop g4 was played instead of g5 because of the rook h1 idea. Yes. So now he's attacking the e2 pawn.
Yes, and he's also defending d5. So this was, again, it's a very good move, because e4 is now defended. That's why it was so important to have both of the rooks on the e line. And now, if you even was thinking of giving the exchange, now you cannot do it any longer, because you don't get the d5 pawn. It will not be enough for you. So
knight a5 was played here, attacking the pawn on b7.
Yeah, and probably this is too slow, because we put in the knight on the rim, and what is happening here is from the d line to the h line. There's not so much action on the queen side, and the problem for White is that Black is looking at the king, and of course, if you if you succeed with your play on the king side,
Then it's game over.
It's game over, absolutely. So putting the knight so far away, that was surprising me. And I was just wondering, why doesn't he go? Yeah, but he can't see any other way to use the knight. And that's why this knight d5 was so important, to block the file, to avoid white to put in the knight on d6 to attack black's pieces. So I don't know what white could do, but as we saw, it was just white put the knight on the rim, there is a rook on a1 not playing, while black has all his pieces active.
So rook f6, attacking the pawn on f2.
Yeah, that was a fantastic
Yeah, it was a really
one.
beautiful move.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful move. And the problem is that you cannot lose f2 because the rook gets so close to the king. And it's also not only gets close to the king, it's just a so important move, important pawn. And then after that, it's like when you have a rook on the 7th, or here would be the white's second rank, it's worth so much because the rook would take on f2, it would take on e2, and then you would just...
everything would collapse.
Yeah, collapse, absolutely.
So the king is forced to go back to g1, but now it feels like king h2 was a loss of a tempo.
It was a loss of time, and that's why now we have this
yes,
blow.
g5.
And the blow with g5 is so strong, and the king is on g1. So here it comes. And now we see that white is defenseless.
Yeah.
I don't know, what did he try?
He went knight takes b7 to try to reroute the knight to c5.
Yeah, but I was because now let's see if you go, if you take on d5, black would just take back and take on h4, because with the bishop on g4, the queen is already defended.
Yeah, the queen is already defended. So he, after takes on b7, he was able to take on h4.
Yes.
The knight went back because I suppose that, if you take back, then the rook is coming in and everything is just collapsing.
Yeah, if you take back the rook, rook g6 and
bishop h3 is a threat, everything is a threat. So now he's trying to take on e4. h3 was played here, attacking the bishop.
And this is a very beautiful move.
This is a really beautiful move.
It's a really beautiful move. Oh, it looks like, what? You are closing the king position. I will save the game, but it's not like that. This pawn is becoming such a power.
Incredibly strong. So he ended up going rook takes e4. If something like knight takes e4, we were looking at that yesterday, then I think we were saying that there is h takes g2.
No, there's you will take f. Yes, you're right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because you're threatening mate in one.
You're threatening mate in one.
And if you take the rook, the knight can take back.
That's very important, of course. So knight can take back, and after something like king g2, bishop e2, all these light squares are very, very weak.
Yes.
So, but instead he opted to go for rook takes e4, and after rook takes e4, he did the same thing. He took on g2.
Yeah, that's
sacrificing the rook.
Yeah, this is really beautiful move. But it's because black has enough pieces to attack the king. The rook on e8 is not it's not an attacking piece. So you can take it. I have the pieces I need, and I have got the time I wanted to have. I'm playing as quickly as possible against your king.
Yeah.
And you don't have any piece to defend it. The poor king is just alone.
It's just completely alone. So he took the rook on e8, king g7, f4, trying to create an escape route for the king.
Yes.
But there is no escape route because after queen h1 check, king f2, you take the rook back. There's the threat of queen f1 checkmate, so the king needs to take back on g2. And now there is the really beautiful mating net, bishop h3 check. And the king cannot escape anywhere because if the king goes to h2, there's queen f1. There is going to be a checkmate on g2. There's no way of stopping it. And if the king takes back, if the king takes here, there is queen h1 check. And after king g4, well, there is h5 check, I believe.
Yes, and
king here.
And up, yeah.
Queen h3.
A king running up on the board is only possible in the end games. Here with so many pieces, there will be.
There's no way of stopping the mate. So after king h2, queen f1, Ding Liren resigned and Nepo won this game. And I think it was incredible to see such a decisive game. I mean, Nepo won in 33 moves against such a strong player with the black pieces. So that was definitely a huge surprise in the beginning of the tournament.
Absolutely, it was just such amazing game, such amazing attacking game.
Very beautiful attacking game.
Very beautiful attacking game, and so it was incredible to see just like this. This was really, really fantastic to watch this game.
Amazing to watch this.
Yes, absolutely, and and I must say I really love this move H6. This
H6 is a really nice move.
Yeah, this slow attacking move, and very, very good game. And somewhere white went wrong in this game. And maybe it was that it was easy for black to play. Black had more the plans clear how he should continue, and he was targeting the white king. And it was not so easy for white to get the pieces to defend the king.
No, definitely. So this is a fantastic game. We will see how this impacts Ding Liren if he's able to come back from this loss, which is going to be really important to be able to do. But let's go ahead and go now to game number 2. So game number 2 was between two Americans that I think many of you know, Fabiano Caruana and Hikaru Nakamura. Fabiano Caruana, like I said, he has won the candidates in the past, and he played against Magnus Carlsen. It was a very close match, but then Carlsen won in the tie breaks. So this was the first game, this was the first round, of course, between Fabiano and Hikaru. So e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. So we had a Berlin,
which is considered so solid, and so popular among the best players in the world. And we can say that white now played his d3, and it's a little bit like going out of the most theoretical lines. Just keep the game going. White is not looking for advantage, so it's a little bit like anti-Berlin. I will not let you take on e4. I want to keep the pawns on the board, and we will have a more slow position.
So bishop c5, developing the bishop. Bishop takes c6, d takes c6. And now I guess an important point to note is that knight takes e5 is not possible due to queen d4, threatening the knight and threatening checkmate.
Yeah, so this will not, it's not good for white to play like that.
So knight d2 is played instead, bishop e6, and castles.
And now when white castles, the plan is to take on e5, so black has to defend it.
Because now this is defended. So bishop d6 was played to defend the pawn, knight b3.
And that was a move that a little bit surprised me, but the knight couldn't go to c4, and white wanted to a little bit open up for the bishop and a little bit regroup the pieces. So that's why knight b3 came. But white has some ideas with his knight move, absolutely.
So queen e7.
Yeah, and queen e7 is quite a nice move because you are you're defending c5, which is something you needed to defend it a little later on if white played bishop e3, and you also a little bit keeping the option open where you will put the king. So probably you will put the king on the king side, but you have the possibility maybe
to castle queen side if you would want to.
If you want to. And also on e7, the queen is the best square. The queen is also defending the pawn on e5, which might be important later on.
Yeah. So knight a5 was played here, and the idea of that is to attack b7.
Yeah, and it's a little bit like saying, are you going to castle alongside? Yeah, I have a piece in front of your king.
Yeah.
You really want to do that. And also maybe a little bit like disturbing black's plan, because black, he cannot move the pawn. It's hanging on c6. And if you are defending it, you don't want to defend it with the bishop. You don't want to go back with the bishop, because then the rook is not playing.
Yeah.
So black defended with the rook, but now if you want to castle, it always have to be on the short
you're
side.
forced now to castle on this side. Bishop g5, pinning the knight. Active move for the bishop.
Yeah, it's a very active move for the bishop, and it's logical to play that. But in the end, you don't want to take on f6 so quickly, but you want to pin it.
So h6 was played. Now I guess
Yeah, now it's logical that the h6 is a very normal move. It's a standard move. When you go bishop g5, we play h6 because you have to decide on what diagonal you want to be. And of course, if you go there, you don't want to go back because h6 is a very useful move for black. So you keep the bishop on the diagonal, you keep the pin.
You keep the pin, but now the bishop cannot come back here. So bishop h4, and now Hikaru went for g5.
Yeah, g5 is very, this is a very common move to play in lots of different kind of gaucho piano, also in the Spanish, and it's because the position is closed, so you're not so worried about that you're weak in front of your king, because there is not any open lines, and like that you get out of the pin, because this pin is a little bit annoying, and so you can start using your knight also.
So bishop g3, and then knight d7. The knight, the knight is maybe trying to go to c5?
Yeah, the knight is, first of all, you need to defend on e5 though. So this was actually, there was a logical way to do it. But you're planning to regroup the knight, maybe not so much to c5, but maybe knight f8, knight g6. Maybe
knight f8, knight g6, yes.
Maybe you have plans like that. So because if you could put the knight on f4, it would be a very, very active square for the knight.
So d4.
Yeah, and now we have a little bit what we are learning when we are young, that when someone is attacking on one of the flanks here on the king side, we see that black is playing with the pawns on the king side. We open up the center. That
is like a great tip to know.
So that's very, and that's also why black felt that he needed to move the knight so he can defend the center, keep the center close with his pawn move.
Because white doesn't want to open up the king side and black doesn't want to open up the center.
No.
Especially when the king is still in the center.
Yeah, absolutely. No. So
queen d3?
Yeah, queen d3 is a little bit also, it's a good move because now maybe you want to go knight c4, so it's defended. If you want to put the knight on c4, you also get the rook. You can play with the rook on the queen side now because the queen has moved out. You're also a little bit looking at f5, these squares. And if you will be hit, no, black can never play g4 because you would play knight h4 and you get very nice squares.
So h5 was played.
Yeah, and h5, you have a direct threat. I'm going to win your piece here. I'm going
trap
to take
the bishop. So d takes e5 was played because of that.
Yes.
And knight takes.
Yeah, he took with a knight. And if you take with a pawn, for example, you can. If you take with a pawn, white would go h4.
Yeah.
And after, if you go g4, I have this knight g5. And I have this square. And after I will go knight c4, I will go rook d8, and I will put pressure in the center. So it's very, very difficult for black to get rid of this knight on g5. It's just a very beautiful outpost, and it might be that if black moves the bishop, maybe I will go f3 and I will start playing on the f3 or f4. First I will go knight c4, I will go rook d8 and rook d1, putting pressure on the d line, and I can consider trying to open up the f line with f4 later on.
Also because the king might become more weak then.
Yeah, it might.
So knight takes e5 was played instead. Bishop takes e5 because this was the piece that was going to get trapped. F takes e5, knight c4. And now the knight is finally coming up to the square that it wanted to go to.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see now, black has got the bishop pair, but the bishop on d6 is not such a big bishop yet. It's more...
It's like a pawn.
It looks like a pawn, but it's very, very important to keep on e5. And now rook d8 is a logical move. You want to have the rook there. White can take on e5, and you have more harmony with your pieces.
So knight takes d6 was played.
Yeah, and this surprised me.
Yeah.
This surprised me. And I thought, now you're taking away this bishop on d6, this passive piece. Black doesn't have any double pawns yet. Isn't this good for black? Isn't this at least, fine equal for black? But white... We will see how white is continuing.
White had queen e3, which was a really nice move.
Queen e3 is a very, very good move. And it's because you have this double attack.
Yeah.
And it's not that white is going to win a pawn. But what happens is that you are pushing... black needs to put the pawn forward. Let's see what's happening.
G4. So the knight has to move.
Yes.
And then a6.
And now comes the idea with the plan. Yeah, first a little slow.
Yeah, first b3.
And it's a little bit like you are defending the pawn on a2. You can move the rook more freely. You might want to play c4 later on. I don't think you want to go knight c4 because you will get a very, very sad pawn structure. but you are also, when you go c4, you're restricting the bishop. So this is a little bit like a waiting move, a little bit seeing what are you going to do. And when you have decided your actions, I will maybe take my actions too.
Yeah.
So it's a prophylactic move.
And now Hikaru went for castles, which I think also was a little bit surprising, maybe.
In one way, yes, but we can see that there's no way for the black king to go to the queen side, because this queen on e3 is fantastic. It's standing in the middle of the board, but if you put the king on the queen side, I can go to b6, a7 probably. And when you are on the king side, I can also annoy you with queen h6.
For sure.
So the queen are perfectly placed on e3 for all kinds of action, and black needed to put the king in safety.
Yeah, so you think that castles was a normal move because of that?
Yeah, it was a normal move.
Yeah.
And now
f3.
We see the strategy on white's play, and this is why white wanted to take the bishop on d6, because when we open up the position, we don't want black to have the bishop pair. They can become extremely strong together in an open position.
For sure.
So that's why white took away this sad bishop on d6. Open up and a little bit saying black that your pawn has been pushed too far. And also, when you have a white square bishop, black would love to have the pawns on g5 or g7 and h6 on black squares.
Yeah, and not on white squares because they're blocking the bishop.
Yeah, so now you will be, black decided to go queen e7. The queen is good there, because with the idea with the queen e7, it stands in front of the king. King is more safer, but you're also planning to push a pawn in the center, and then the pawn on e5 is defended with the queen there.
Yeah, so if you would push. So f takes g4 was played. H takes g4 and rook a d1.
Yeah, and now we can see, if you look at the end games, because it's always good to think of what pieces do I want to change. And actually now, if we would change everything and we have a knight endgame, we put the knight on e3, we can go up with the knight to g4, the king to g3. Then you see this pawn on g4 is extremely weak.
Yeah.
It's extremely weak because it has been pushed too far. And this has been the plan for white, that get black to push the pawns.
Yeah.
And now he's going to attack them.
Thinking about the endgame.
Yeah, thinking about the endgame.
So d5, e takes d5, c takes d5, and rook e1, attacking the pawn on e5.
So it's a little bit the same. You're pushing the pawns forward. Yes, come. And now I'm attacking them. What are you going to do with them?
How are you going to defend them? e4. And now he exchanged. Rook takes f8, rook takes, and c4, attacking this other pawn, the defender of e4.
Yeah, so that's why he exchanged, because he has the maximum pressure on e4. All his free pieces are attacking, and he takes away the defender. And now, really, black, if black takes on c4, we have time to take on e4 and take back on c4. We will actually win a pawn. So it's not possible for black to take on c4. So, and
rook e8 was played.
Yeah, so the rook had to go to a more passive position to keep the pawns. And I don't know if this is right or not, if there was some way to try to play more active here for black. But it's not so easy, because you have this weakness on e4, you have a weakness on g4 also, and you can see that the pawns, when they are pushed to white squares, the bishops get more restricted.
So rook e8 takes, and knight f1. So he's trying to put his knight on g3 or e3 maybe.
Yeah, the knight wants to be on e3 because what we really want to do, we want to block this pawn. And on e3, we're also blocking the diagonal towards the king. And from e3, you're attacking d5, you're attacking g4. Maybe you can go to f5 and you can start attacking the king, because you see that this king with the g pawn so far away, stands quite open.
Yeah. So queen e5 and queen h6, and here we're seeing the idea, I guess, of going knight e3.
Yeah.
As well.
And that's why it's so also very important to keep the rook on, to keep the rook on e1, because there's no chance for black now to play e3, because it would just take it. So it's very
take it.
Yeah, it's so important to block a pawn and as soon as possible.
Yeah, because otherwise the pawn that's weak can become strong. So queen g7, queen d6, attacking the bishop, bishop c6, and now he finally got his knight up to e3.
Yeah, because white knows that white doesn't want to change the queens. White could change the queens, go into the endgame, but white is better here. But black has good chances to have a draw, to keep the draw, because rook and bishop together are very strong, and with the rook on the boards, you can give lots of checks. So what black wants to do, black wants to keep the rooks. He doesn't want to go into an endgame with bishop against the knight, because that will be very good for white. The white king can play in, have all the time in the word, in the word. But so that's why black is trying to change queens, and white is saying no. And now he gave the pawn, but it's because black believed that he will not be able to keep this pawn in the long run. So I give the pawn. You will have a double pawn, which will be worth much less, and I will also open up a little bit of your position.
So takes queen e5.
Yes, I want to change queens.
He wants to exchange queens. Queen g6, queen g7, queen d6. Now this was also a time where they had quite little time left, so they were sort of, I guess, repeating a little bit just to get more time. Queen takes g3, so he actually gave the pawn on g3, but the idea was to go rook f1 and put the rook on this file.
Yeah, exactly, because white wants to attack, and white will have, 3 pieces to attack, and we know, knight and queen together are very, very strong. And black will have only 2 pieces to defend, because this bishop is defending e4. It's not really defending the king. So if white just can play one more move, rook f5 or rook f6, the game would be over.
Yeah.
So black has to really to stop this threat, and that's why he's, all the time trying to
exchange
these queens, and white is no, I don't want
no exchange of queens. And now he finally goes rook d1 here.
Yeah, and it's because they passed the control. So white had some time to think, and it was also that black realized that he was too scared to let the knight jump to f5. So that's why he played this bishop d7.
So bishop e6, and now knight d5, and this was a great move.
Yeah, this is a great move, and it was a little bit like black, when you go with the bishop to e6, is of course that black wants to stop that move. He doesn't want white to be able to activate the knight further, closer to his king. But white was able to do that, and we can see why. Because did he take it or not?
No, he went rook f8.
Yeah, because if you take it, the problem is rook g5 is coming, but there is also something very, very difficult for black, because after rook e5, this is what
stop this.
Yeah, we will have. We simply just have.
Rook d8 check.
Or we can go queen d8 check is actually also very fine. Queen d8 check.
And the king is. Oh yeah,
and we have rook d7.
And we have rook d7. So I guess anything is really good. Yeah.
It's just anything.
And
is
then
just,
rook d7.
So it's just finishing the game.
So either of those moves. So that is not possible. And queen a1 check, king h2. There is no more check. So this rook is fantastic here.
Yeah, exactly, because the king will be mated, or he will win the queen. So rook f8, just to try to stop.
He took the pawn.
Now he took the pawn, but it's also because you take the pawn, you're taken with the threat, and you are continuing your attack, and it's still very difficult for black to take on d5. But maybe this is what he had to do. Actually, I think if
he went queen h6.
Queen h6, because if you take on d5, I guess we will go rook. I think we will go rook takes d5 here. No, we will not go rook takes d5. We will go queen takes d5 with check. Sorry. So we will go to queen takes d5, you move the king, and then probably we will just play rook d3, and we will have this starting this.
The king is so weak.
The king is so weak, and we see the difference. This g pawn is so important. You have an extra pawn, but the king is also staying safe with the g pawn.
So rook e1 threatening the bishop.
And now, again, black wants to get into the endgame. He wants to get away with
exchange.
So he's ready to go to the endgame with a pawn less. But because he wants to get away with attack, he doesn't want to have any more attack. But white, no. I'm going for you, king. Absolutely. King f7 first, and knight 5. And now, again, if you take on f5, queen f6, you have queen h7, and it will be just
Yeah, because if I move such as queen g7, there's always rook e7 check winning the queen.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you go something else, you have rook f1, you're pinning it. So
queen f6 was played instead, and rook f1 came anyways. Bishop d5, threatening the queen, and then knight h6 check. Queen cannot take it because of the pin. King g7, queen g4 check, and here Hikaru resigned.
Yeah, he resigned because you have to go, you have to put the queen. We can show you how you will win the queen here. Queen g6 is only more. We go knight f5. You have to put the king,
king h7.
King h7, and we go queen h4, and we have a rook on d8. We will take the check.
Everything is hanging.
Everything is hanging.
So that is why Hikaru resigned. So this was also a great game by Fabiano, and what did you think about the game?
It was a very, very great game. I thought White didn't have anything in the opening. It was a very, very slow play. But White had a strategy, and I think White's strategy won. And it was just like getting Black to push the pawns, and when they had been pushed forward, White was attacking them, and then they became weaknesses. So I think this was a very, very nice game by Caruana, absolutely. And it was also very exciting to see the clash between the two Americans.
Absolutely.
And I must say, I have played against Caruana. I played against him twice. It was like 2010, 2011. I was White in both games, and I managed to make 2 draws. So I'm very happy with that.
You're going to keep them forever.
I will keep them forever, yes.
That's amazing. All right, let's go ahead and go to the third game. And this third game, I must say, was a very exciting. It's going to go for this one, actually. This third game was a very, very, very exciting one. We will go for the Firouzja game, for the Firouzja versus Radjabov game after this. But this was the game between Duda and Rapport. And they're both very creative players. And this opening, I mean, let me tell you, was nothing... it was not slow at all. It was anything but slow. So
absolutely. And when you see the first moves, we get to the position. You could never believe that this was happening in the candidate tournament.
Absolutely. So here we have this. So this is a Taimanov that Black was playing.
Yeah, not yet, but
not
soon.
Yet. Okay.
No, soon. Now we have the Taimanov. Taimanov, absolutely.
Yeah.
And in Taimanov was Mark Taimanov, a Russian player, and he was given name to this opening. And I have actually played with him. I met him lots of times. So it's
and I have met him too. I didn't know this. I played this opening.
Yeah, you didn't know this. Yeah,
I didn't know that I've ever met him. Taimanov, the man himself.
Yeah, fantastic. And this was what's so nice. Lots of openings have been named after great players, and some are still alive. And so that's very exciting.
Yeah.
Taimanov is considered very solid, and now comes Bishop f4. I played Taimanov lots of times in my life, many years. I never met Bishop f4 in my life, but there's an idea with it, of course, because normally we develop the pieces, but normally we go out with the knights before we go out with the bishop. So knight c3 is the common, but now here Black can play a6, but Black can also play queen c7, which is the main line. And after queen c7, you cannot play bishop f4 any longer. So this is the plan with White. I go bishop f4. I'm stopping you for queen c7, and I think that Black started to think here already. And I'm sure he was out with his preparation now.
So d6, knight takes c6, pawn takes, and bishop d3.
Yeah, and here we can see another idea why didn't want to develop the knight on b1, because perhaps you're going to put the pawn on c4. So it's normal development. The bishop on d3, you're defending e4, and you're going to castle,
So knight e7.
And this is the move I was a little bit shocked, because I think that the knight should belong to be on f6. So I would have preferred maybe to play knight f6, but after knight f6 you have to be careful. e5 is in the air, or maybe to go e5, kicking the bishop, and then knight f6. So I can stand on f6, the best square for the knight.
Develop 3-7.
And bishop will develop t7, and then I'm very much planning to go d5 also to get the center.
So knight e7 was played, and now c4 was played, and this was the idea of White, like you said, to go c4 before knight c3. And g6.
And when I saw all this, I was thinking, what is happening here? But it's, of course, this is the logic. If you put the knight on e7, you have developed it, you need to get out with your pieces quickly. So you want to fianchetto it, and if you and also with the bishop d3, d6 is not hanging. So this is the idea, to go bishop g7. If you start attacking d6, I can go e5 and I can block it. So this is the idea. But black's play is slow, and we will see what white is doing now.
c5 came here
c5
as an explosive move.
Absolutely, what a move. So white is attacking black now, and this is what you are doing. If your opponent is playing slow in the opening and you see that you can take an advantage of it, you have to do it, and you have to do it now. So white is doing it even before black, before castling. So what is happening here? Because black could actually go after the pawn with check, but that would be very, very dangerous. Check, you put the knight between on d2 here, and now either knight c4 or maybe rook c1 first, whatever you want. Maybe knight c4 directly. You're starting to attack d6, and we see that there's no way for black to defend it more than to go knight g8, and you don't want to put another piece on the first rank for black. So yeah, this would have been so dangerous for a pawn. White would have get so much development.
There's a lot of initiative. So here e5 was played.
Yeah, because the idea is also, if you take on c5 with the pawn, I just want to show that we will go castling, and then after we will go knight a3, knight c4. We have a lovely, lovely square for the knight, and these two c pawns are just in the way for black. They're very weak, this double pawn, and you see the bishop on c8 has big problems to get out and get into the game.
Absolutely. So that is why e5 was played instead, and then bishop g5.
Yeah, bishop g5. It's actually, I just want to go bishop f6. I'm pinning the knight, but I want to go bishop f6, and after that you have no chance to castle.
No, because the rook will have to move. So bishop g7 was played because of that. C takes d6, queen takes d6, and castles.
Yeah, in this position it's just nice for white, because you see the pawn islands black has. White has two pawn islands, one on the king side center, and one on the queen side. They are harmony, they are together, but black has a free pawn like two pawn islands, a7 and c6. So the queen side is very weak for black, and this is what white has been playing for, to create these weaknesses, and now we are going to use them to play against them.
So the endgames will always be bad for black.
Yeah, the endgame is always bad for black. So this is normal. You develop the bishop.
Knight a3.
Rook d8. And this is actually why black was a little bit worried about keeping the pieces. So that's why he decided to play this little bit forcing move to just exchange the queens. But he's a little bit missing development, because we see the king is in the middle, the rook on h8 is not playing yet.
So queen takes queen was played, rook takes, and then there was a big exchange here, and now Duda took with the bishop, but yeah, do you want to explain?
Yeah, we were very surprised, because it's so logical. You put the rook on an active square on the open file, and black has to do something. And actually here there is a little bit hidden tactics. So if, let's say, black plays some slow move, take here. Yeah, what are we doing? Yes, we can attack. And how can we attack black here?
We can do, if you guys want to pause the video very quickly and tell me in the comments what you think the move is, you can do that now. But there's a really beautiful tactic here, which is to go knight b5.
So you're actually giving the knight, but if you take it, it just will be a forced mate. Yeah, you can show the mate here.
It's going to be a forced checkmate, because the knight is in the way of the king.
Yeah.
Well, there is a bishop here, but still, so this is just a checkmate.
Yeah, and there we see how white can use, the fact that black hasn't developed, what we are learning from early on, that we have to develop quickly. But it was because white was putting so much pressure on black from the beginning, and using the fact that black had a slow way of development, the pieces, and maybe not to the best squares. So
and if something, anything happens, whatever move happens, there's also the threat of knight c7 check, and then the checkmate. So there's this threat too.
Yeah, so even if black would manage to get out of the checkmate, white would enter with the knight and the rook on the black's king side, and it just would be very, very difficult for
this pawn is hanging too. So
I think that was maybe the first mistake. It looked like not the best move, at least.
To take back with the bishop.
And especially because now I think white went back to e2. So, and I guess you have played these two a little bit slow moves. King d7 was a very nice move because the queen side is weak. You need to defend it. You need your king there to defend the pawns.
Exactly. So knight c8.
Yeah.
And rook d1 check. So now the rook is coming in, but I guess with a few tempos less.
Yeah, and also because black managed to get the king to the queen side, which he would not have been able to do if he took with the rook from the beginning.
Yeah.
So he has one more piece to defend his weak pawns. I think that helped black. Yes.
So bishop c4 was played here.
Yeah, and the idea is simply that if black takes on c4, I take back with a knight, and we know a knight on c4 is tremendous.
It's amazing.
It's amazing because you can take c6, you are looking at the e5, and you're avoiding black from playing knight e6, and there's no way for black to take away this beautiful knight.
Yeah, there's no pawn or anything. So bishop g4 was played to keep the bishops, and now f3.
Yeah, and I was a little bit surprised by bishop g4, but why he played it is actually because he wanted white to create this weakness. So sometimes there can be some moments you need to give it check, and that's why he created. I thought that it would have been better for black to keep the pawn on f2, but no, he wanted to be on f3.
That did not happen. Absolutely. So f6 was played as a counterattack to f3.
Yeah, and it's because, the pawn was, if black would just have gone back, white would have taken on f7 and had a whole pawn more. You can't allow it. And, black would have been happy to change bishop, to play with different color bishop on the board, to exchange these bishops, because then it would be probably the game would finish a draw.
Yeah, there would be a lot of more drawing chances. So bishop e3, white keeps the bishops. The bishop has to pretty much go back to d7 and bishop e2. So now I guess he's trying to open up for this square for the knight?
Yeah, now he wants to get in with the knight to c4. And black plays h5. I was a little bit surprised by the move, but I thought that some ideas is one can be that sometimes you have bishop h6, and then
to exchange the bishop.
To exchange the bishop. Sometimes just to avoid that white can play rook c1. And when you play a move like bishop h6, you like to have space. You like to have the pawn on h5. You have more space there.
Yeah.
So it's a prophylactic good move he played.
So knight c2.
Yeah, now he was regrouping the knight to c2. I was a little bit surprised. I was more expecting knight c4 to be played, and then sometimes to go knight a5. But he wanted to play knight b4. He was actually looking for getting the knight to c5. Knight b4, knight e6, and knight c5. These are a little bit the plans here and that's how you play against an isolated pawn. You normally try to control the square in front of it.
Yeah, so bishop f8 was played to avoid knight b4.
Yeah.
a3.
Yeah, and now came a5. And
everything to avoid it.
Yeah, you can see how the players are playing against each other. I go a3. Now my plan is maybe knight b4. If you take, I will have the bishop pair. And black say, no, I'm not letting you go to a5. So they are playing against each other's plans.
So king f1, the king is trying to become active.
Because, yes, if you go, can you go back? Yes. If you here, go back one move. If you go bishop d2, this is why it was so important to force f3. We have bishop c5, and we are king f1, and now we can defend the pawn with bishop b6. So,
exactly. And it's incredible that, the players saw these several moves back, and that was the reason why f3 was forced, just so that this diagonal would be open. So it's incredible that the players can see so many moves in advance.
Absolutely.
So king f1, I guess now bishop d2 is a threat, because now there isn't any check. So that is why, so bishop e6 was played. Bishop d2, and now king b6. So instead of the bishop defending, the king is defending.
And it was very important that bishop moved first, so you didn't have a low piece on d7. So bishop e6 was very good move, yes.
So knight e3, knight d6, controlling the c4 square.
Yeah, because white was planning to put the piece on c4 again, and black wants to avoid it. And the knight is good on d6. The king is better on b6, because after now rook c1, it's not pinned, so the king is better on b6. And we can see in position like this, what black actually has. Black has a more active king than white has. White has pieces to play with. They're playing a little bit far away, but they're attacking the queen side, and black would just dream of white putting a piece on c4, exchanging everything, going into some kind of rook and bishop endgame, because when you have less pieces and you change the right pieces, it will help the defender.
Absolutely. So c5 was played here. Bishop e1, bishop h6, pinning the knight. The rook goes to d1, threatening the knight. So bishop takes is not possible because there is a check and the bishop is hanging. So the rook has to defend, and now the knight is coming into d5.
And I thought that this position was just improving for black, for white, because now you will get this good bishop, and because the pawn on f6 is also hanging, you have to take it.
And now the rook becomes very active.
And this is a very important move, bishop e3, because black was planning, yes, bishop f2 and to win the c5 pawn. You need to defend it. But now you see the bishop, which was just such a passive piece, has entered the game, and it has a very good future. Bishop d4, you are defending c5, defending e5, and you're attacking even white's pawns. So white has come, and maybe this rook d3 was maybe this is not the best move. Maybe white should play a little bit more quietly to put the pawn on a4, just to let black have this weakness on a5, and then to play against it, but much lower. And we see here that white has the bishop pair. White has fantastic bishop in e2. Black is pinned. It's difficult to get out of the pin, and we also have the king defending a5. So maybe a4 would have been a better way to play very, very slowly against white's weaknesses, black's weaknesses. And we have this bishop pair, very, very important bishop pair to play with.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we saw instead rook d3 being played. The bishop went to d4, rook b3 check, king c6. And now the pawn was actually hanging on a5.
Yeah.
But after rook a8, rook b6 check, king goes back, rook a6, this pawn is also going to be hanging.
Yeah, and actually white saw that there was no way to keep the b pawn. If you go back here, yes, if you don't go rook b6, but if you move the bishop somewhere, I will go bishop c, I will go c4, and I will actually, what are you going to do with your rook? If you go here, yes, I will go c4, you move the rook, and actually here I can take on c3, and I take on a3, this will be a draw immediately. Bishop takes c4, I take on c3, I take on c3, yes. And
it's just a draw.
It's just a draw, because the knight is very good avoiding that the rook can enter.
So that is why white decided to at least get this past a pawn to try to get something.
Yes. So we can see what have happened here now. Yeah, you defend the pawn. That we have still equal pawns, but white has got a pass pawn and it's more far away. And we know that when the knight is defending against a pass pawn, the most difficult one are the ones on the side, on the rim, because the knight has very, very big difficulties to defend against the pawn on the rim. So this is what white is playing on. The bishop pair, and I have a pawn more far away. If we would change all the pieces, go into the pawn ending, I would win it, because I have this pawn more far away. So there are facts. So white is keeping the advantage, but there's no extra pawn.
So c4, and yeah, I mean, I guess that one of the reasons why that's also why the knight has a bigger, difficulties with that is because there's only like the knight cannot like jump like to the left of the A file. The knight can only be on the knight can only be on the C or B file. There's no other file that the knight can be in to defend. To defend,
exactly. And there is, there is this, if you have the knight on B5, you have the knight on B7, I have A5 and I go A6. You are only one square for the pawn, but there's no way to stop it because it's on the side.
Exactly. So that is a great point. So bishop B4.
And I want to say C4 is a very good move to play because you see this bishop at A6, you can't get it out. It's a little bit stuck there. It's a little bit in the way. And you want to put the pawns on white squares for black because you want to restrict this bishop, really.
Absolutely. So bishop b4 check, h4, the king goes up.
Yeah, h4 is also an important move because you have if white ever would take on d6 and take on c4, we have different color bishops, and then I need to defend my pawns and I need to have them on black squares, so you not will be able to go and take all my pawns with your bishop.
So he's planning for that already.
Yeah, already now. So it was important pawn move.
So bishop a5, bishop c1. Now the bishop is attacking here on f6. So that was why he went bishop c1, to be able to go bishop g5 and defend the pawn.
It's very, very important move because the knight needs to stay on d6. The knight is very beautiful, but there's a problem. You cannot move it. It has to stay there to avoid any kind of bishop b5 checks, any kind of taking the pawn. So you are quite restricted with your knight, and actually you can't move it. So king c2, and now white has a very
king d1,
king d1, so king c2, king c3, and just grab the pawn.
That's the idea. So king d7, the king is attacking the bishop. The bishop goes back to b6.
Yeah,
to stay on this diagonal.
And you want, yes, actually. Black needed to do that. You can't have this bishop attacking my pawn all the time because I need to be able to use my bishop to get them more active.
So the king goes back to c6, a5, they're pushing the pawn. The bishop goes to f4 to, I guess, weaken a little bit. Yeah, because if h3, I guess then you get the g3 square.
Yeah, it's like you're weakening the pawn, but it's also you get your bishop more active.
Yeah.
So after h3, bishop g3, yes, let's say we play something like that. You go king c2, maybe... what will I play here? I will play maybe some. Maybe I would have gone king h. I would have gone maybe bishop a. Sorry, I would have gone bishop. I will just make some little bit waiting move here. Let's see what will wait me. Maybe we will wait with king d7. Yeah, maybe this is what we have to wait with king d7. And after queen c3, king c3, I just want to show that you
after king
d7, let's say
king c3,
we will have, or maybe we had f5 actually. We had bishop e1. So
bishop e1 check.
And this is why the bishop needs to be there. So you always have bishop e1 check, taking away the king from attacking the pawn. But it could be that instead of bishop h2, what I played, that you wanted to go f5 to create...
Yeah, to create some sort of counter threats as well. So king c2 happened, giving the pawn, but the idea is that if bishop takes h2, I suppose there's king c3 threatening this pawn. So f5, king c3, he's giving this pawn on e4. It's doing everything to capture this pawn on c4.
Yeah, I was very surprised by what I was seeing here.
Yeah.
But white thought that time was very important, that he doesn't have time to move the pawn, because then black would put bishop on e3 and always kick back the king, before you can take on c4. So that's why he played so quickly, even giving a pawn. And he took
back, and now if knight takes happen, and then king takes c4 was played.
Yeah, and now bishop b5 is a big threat, so black needs to go back with a knight to keep to keep the bishop away from b5 as long as possible.
Yeah, now this is being stopped. Bishop takes h2. Finally, black took this pawn, bishop e2.
And we see here, black has actually a pawn more, but it's still white who's playing for a win. It's still
because
black.
of this pawn.
Because of this pawn, and because, and we can also say that if white managed to run with the pawn and black gives to knight for the pawn, this bishop endgame with only the g-pawn against, with two bishops against one bishop, g-pawn against the three other pawns, it will probably be winning.
So if this knight sacrificed itself for the pawn.
Because black will not be able to exchange the g-pawn.
Yeah.
And the white king will quickly rush to the king side. So black has to stop the pawn from moving in other ways.
Absolutely.
In another way, yeah.
So e4 was played, and I guess...
it's to restrict the bishop. So again, he put it on a white square, so the bishop cannot play. And when he put it on the white square, also his own bishop is playing. So this is the typical. You have a black square bishop, you put the pawns on the white square, and here you also do it against the white square bishop.
Exactly. So, and this is also great because it's restricting, I guess, the bishop from, ever coming to c6.
Yeah, absolutely.
F3, sorry.
F3. It's so important that if you need to move your knight, there is no bishop F3 because it could be just really helping. And this was the plan because white was moving the bishop, and it was not the plan to take on d6, but it was planning to start moving the pawn.
Boom, boom, boom. Yes.
And that's why Black played this. And knight f5. You couldn't play this without making e4.
Yeah, because then there was the check.
Yeah, and with the idea with bishop f5, knight f5, we will see. Yes, bishop comes. Very important to go with the king. Can you move one more back? Very important to go with the king to c7, so you don't get a6 with check here. The pawn would just rush further. Very dangerous. And that is, if you go a6, this is the plan of black. You have the bishop pair. You control all the squares. And I go bishop d6. And if you go a7, we take on c with check.
There's no time to make a queen, and now there's king b7, you're going to get the pawn.
And this is just a draw, yeah. So
that was the idea.
So this is, black is creating a fortress with his move. So bishop c4 comes, and black needs to change one of the bishop pair, and then you will manage it. So here they were walking back and forth, and finally
we see this.
We see what we were speaking about, and here we saw this, and they took a draw. Yes, very, very quickly.
They just sacrificed all the pawns because there's nothing to do, and it ended in a draw. But it was definitely, Rapport defended in such a beautiful way after the opening, where it seemed like Duda just had an amazing position.
Yeah, I thought this was the game which was going to finish first.
Yeah.
And I thought it was going to be the decisive result, that it was so difficult for black to stay in the game. But Rapport is a great fighter, and maybe white slipped in some moments, didn't play the most accurate move, and with a slow move, black had better chances. But it was just a great defensive game from black side, and we can see very creative opening from white side. Bishop f4, it is just amazing.
Yeah.
And we saw the c5 sacrifice. And it was really
a fantastic game.
And for me, I love the endgame. It was a fantastic endgame to watch also.
It was an amazing endgame. We're now going to go to the final game between Firouzja and Radjabov. Well, Radjabov was playing with the white pieces. Mm-hmm. And this was also a very exciting game. So d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, d5. So we had a
Queen's Gambit, yeah. And here, knight c3. And take on c4. This has become very popular, and the most ambitious move is you put the pawn on e4. You're planning to take a c4. You're planning to you have all the squares in the center. And now, this is not the main line, but it has become very popular the last years. I actually played this position both with white and black. I've seen some very strong players playing this. But I would not expect to see this in the candidate tournament. No, I didn't expect it.
b5.
And the idea is actually, because this b5 pawn is hanging, but the idea is actually, I will...
if takes, then this is hanging.
Yeah, and white doesn't want to do that. You don't want to give your very nice e4 pawn for black's b5 pawn, even if you will have equal pawns, because... No, you don't want to give that. You will take the pawn, but
in a different way. So you go e5 first, defending the pawn, knight d5, and now there is knight takes b5 because now the pawn is not hanging on e4. So knight b6 to defend this pawn on c4.
And this is what black has been playing. Black has taken these double pawns. It doesn't look nice, but he has got... it's not easy for white to win this pawn. And you see this d5 square. White has been pushed forward to e5, so black has a d5 square to play with. So this is a little bit the advantages and disadvantages. You have double pawns, but you have some squares to play on.
Absolutely. So bishop e3, developing and defending, and I guess maybe preventing c5?
Yeah, it's preventing c5 at some points.
Yeah.
It's just a very logical move. You have different plans, but this is one of, it's maybe the most common.
So knight c6 and bishop e2 developing.
Yeah, and I think it's quite important to play this now, because after knight c6, black might have some play knight before knight d3 with check, and because you want to exchange white's good bishop. So if you play play some, let's say we go maybe rook c1, maybe I would just go knight before. If you take on c4, I'm very happy. I got your bishop.
Yeah,
and,
this is a, yeah.
And I will defend everything with knight d5 afterwards. So you don't want to give this bishop for a knight, even if you get the pawn back.
So bishop e2, bishop e7, and castles, and now the knight went back to c3.
Yeah, because the knight was not doing anything, and there now is looking for maybe knight e4, maybe knight c5, maybe knight e4, knight g5, and so it's just quite logical that you put it on the best square, and it's on c3. So white is absolutely not planning to really to take the pawn, not yet. You could have some ideas actually with knight a4, and then after that you could have some ideas with after knight c3, maybe you could have some ideas with knight a4 and then try to grab the pawn on c4. That is actually also could be some idea. Rook b8 is logical. You are
putting the rook on the open file.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was very logical move.
So a3, I guess to prevent the knight from ever coming to b4.
Yeah, because somehow you want to have some harmony. You want to put your queen on c2, d2, and you want to play rook d1, and you don't want to be bothered about knight before knight d5. And then black, so there's a hole on another square.
There's a hole here. Let's go there.
Yeah,
Whoops.
let's go.
Not like that. Black is trying to go knight b3, of course. So queen c2 was played. Knight d5, going to the other hole.
Yeah, exactly.
Rook a d1, activating the rooks.
Yeah, and now knight a5 was important. It was not only looking for b3, but you were also defending c4, because you could not apply knight d5 without defending the c4 pawn.
For sure, because the knight was defending before.
Yeah.
So bishop d2.
Bishop d2, because now, after bishop d2, you have some plans. Yeah, you were looking at the knight needed to move. And knight e4. So here it's coming to a good square. And after knight e4, we can see that white is actually planning to take the c4 pawn. And so that's why black played this plan. And we see this very, very beautiful plan, what black is playing, knight f4.
Yeah.
And what is happening here? Okay, the knight on f4, it's a very good square, but we could dream of put the queen maybe on g4 to try to get some attack. And the plan with knight f4 is, of course, take on e2, sometimes also to put the knight on d3, but just take on e2, and we will take away the white square bishop, and we stay with our pawn, we put pressure on the b line. But there's a pawn hanging, so what is happening here? What is black's plan? I take on c4.
Exactly. Yeah.
So let's say you take, and if you take back,
and this is what happened in the game.
It's what happened, because if you take back, let's say I just show, you see now there is
the rook is defending.
The rook is defending, and we have an extra pawn. We have this d4 backward pawn, but black has weaknesses on the queen side. So this is not what black wants to do. So we had this fantastic move here.
Rook takes b2.
So black gives an exchange to keep the white squared bishop on the board, to create activity. And this is things you do sometimes there. Petrosian was a specialist of giving exchange. I can see in his games, he was looking for it. Most of the times it was good. Sometimes it was maybe the only chance to keep the game going, even if it was difficult. And sometimes it was maybe not the right. But he really loved to do that. And we have Ulf Andersson also loves to do that. But this is what black had to do. And it seems like he gets play for it. Yeah, let's see what happened.
Yeah, so Firouzja gave an exchange, and rook c1. And this was one critical moment, because here we were analyzing quite a lot knight d3.
Yeah, we thought that would be work for black. It looks dangerous, because you need to, if you take on d3, this is fine for black, but
you're getting the exchange back.
You get the exchange back.
Bishop is strong.
Yeah, you keep and you have the bishop pair. Yeah, so that's not what not white wants to do. But after queen c3,
threatening the bishop.
Yeah, threatening on d3, you have to take on c1. Queen take c4. It looks like this knight has problems to get out, but we have a very beautiful move, counter-attack, queen d5. And this looks like this is fine for black, that black is just
Yeah, because if takes on c1, then the knight on e4 is hanging. The queen cannot really, go anywhere. If, for instance, queen c2, then there's knight b3, so the knight gets out. So, yeah. And if exchanges, then the knight is hanging and the knight will get out. So the knight will get out in this variation.
Yeah. So, yeah, we thought that was possible. But
Firouzja went for bishop d5 instead.
And he played it so quickly.
He played it in like a minute. He played it extremely quickly.
So I was so surprised because I thought this was one of the moments when you should think a bit. But he thought that it was the best move.
He actually had 1 hour more than his opponent at this point. So rook e1 and queen a8 taking this whole diagonal.
But that was curious. After blitzing out bishop d5, queen a8, it took like quite a long time.
It took 30 minutes.
To play this. And it looks very logical because if black doesn't create activity very quickly, it's not so sure that he will be able to prove compensation because it's not even a pawn he has for the exchange. He has the bishop pair, he has the grip on d5, but the rooks in the endgame are extremely strong and he has weaknesses also.
Yeah.
So
bishop takes a3, the pawn is hanging, there's the threat of going bishop b4, but there's also threats on h7, which we can see with the move knight f g5, looking at h7 through x-rays.
And that's why black had been thinking along, because he had to go for these forcing moves. White had to defend. White couldn't move his knight on e4 because then black would open out the king side and it would just be mate. So these were more or less forcing move. And again, now white start attack black's king. So a little bit like both are looking at the other side's king, and black doesn't dare to keep making a weakness.
No, because if g6, there's knight f6, the square becomes super weak.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if h6, then there's knight f6 check, and there's a checkmate. So you cannot kick the knight away either, which is an important point. So black basically has to go knight g6, and now h4 is coming. So this does look scary for black. It looks like white has a big attack here.
Yeah, so they were just, playing these attacking moves.
Yeah.
They didn't care about what the other one was doing, just attacking. And it was so interesting to see what happened. White kept moving because, knight kind of moved.
This was extremely tactical, but everything worked. Queen takes d2.
It was very important to point out that you have to take with the queen on d2. You didn't have time to take on g6. I just showed this because after you take on e1, you take on f7, we take back with the rook, and after knight f6 check, g takes, and there's no mate on h7 any longer. The rook is defending it, and in the end, black will just have a piece more here.
Exactly. So yeah, that is a very important point. After something like knight f7, you can even go queen f8.
Yeah,
it's hanging.
Yeah. Queen
and you
f8
cannot escape.
Yeah, queen f8 is just a great move. Yeah, it's taking away anything for black.
So queen takes d2, and now h6 is really important, counterattacking the knight. When black's knight is being attacked too.
Yeah, because otherwise, if you go knight is if you play a move like this, it could probably maybe h6, or maybe we could go. Yeah, I guess you just
because
go h6.
This is going to become such a weak square.
Yeah, and we have this fantastic square for the knight.
Yeah.
And we have still the queen on the board, and the queen will come to f4, close to the king. No, that was not possible.
It's very scary. So h6, h takes g6, h takes g5, g takes f7 with check. Takes with the king because the king is trying to escape to the other side.
That was amazing move.
A very, very beautiful idea to try to escape, because otherwise it looks more natural to take with the rook.
Yeah, but black was so worried about the knight coming close to the king and having the king back is still on the king side. And now we saw this king walk. I didn't expect that. But,
a king walk.
A king walk. But when the knight is on the king side, I moved to the queen side. And then, knight is a slow piece. It takes time for it to go to the other side of the board.
So f3, just to block the bishop and the queen. King d7, the king is walking. Knight e4, the knight is trying to find squares, and that is why it's so important to take it.
Yeah, you need to get away with the knight. You can't let it attack the king. So that's why it happened.
Queen is centralizing itself.
And here we can see that white is still better because the king is a little bit up in the air. We have the weakness on a7. White has a better pawn structure, but black is very happy to have this grip on d5. So the queen is very centralized, and the queen is also defending, and the king side.
Definitely. So queen a4 check. The pawn seems to be hanging, but there's this queen c6 counterattack, and well, I guess queen 8 you can take on a7, which is what happened, but now the rook is coming in, so the rook becomes active here now.
Yeah, that's very important. With the last moves we saw, rook g8 was to defend g7 if white started to attack it. That's why it looked like a very strange move, but it was actually the reason. And black wants also to stay in the 8th rank because, again, like we saw in the game between Caruana and Nakamura, Black wanted to change queens, and this is what Black wants to do here also.
Yeah.
He wants to exchange queens because his king is out in the air, and we get into rook endgame, and there was someone, was it Tara? She said all rook endgames are drawn, even if you have a pawn less. So that's why rook a8 was such an important move to play, because there were no perpetual check with the queen. If he had played, I don't know if he wanted to go back, but there was no perpetual check, and the d4 pawn was also hanging, was not hanging because queen a7 was defending it. So rook a8 to change the queens. Yes, let's go on.
Yeah, it's very important. Now the only place the queen can go to is c5, so finally black is able to exchange the queens. The king comes up. Now white is trying to counterattack, and there's going to be an exchange of pawns here.
Yeah, and black, it's very important for black to exchange all the pawns, get the king to the king side, and because if the king can help on the king side, this will be a draw. And here we can see what happened. Rook a5. Now this is wait here. This is a very beautiful move, because after rook a3, what you're doing is white cannot activate the king. You cannot play with your pawns. You cannot play with your king, because if you go king g3, you want to activate it. We have e4, and we will go into a draw pawn end game.
Yeah, so we can just look at it very quickly. Takes. Now king f6.
And we get the pawn, king here and king g6. We get the pawn in front of the king, g5, king g7, and after king f5 we have the opposition. So it is king g7. So king f5, king f7, and
exactly. And there's opposition. Yeah.
So
exactly. So yeah, that was a really beautiful idea. So
that's why. But white want to. So now white was moving around, to try to get the king more active. And here this was very important also. Again, the king, black put the king on f7. These are the more. And I just wanted to go. Can you just go back? Yes, this moment. You want to play king g5, but this is not possible, because after rook e6, you defend it, whatever you want, you've defended with b5, with take on e5.
And then there's the check.
And show you the pawn ending. I just want to show why this is winning, because here you have the other route. King
you
h4,
can go king h4,
king f6, king a5.
Now the king is going to be in front of the pawn.
King g7, and you have the opposition.
Exactly.
So that's why. So there's always this checking. That's why the king had to go back, and he had to go to f7, close to the king, close to the U line, close to the pawn.
So I can always defend. And now the rook comes back.
So and black has to play actively against white's the weakness on f3. So
exactly.
So they were moving around.
They were moving around for quite a while. The king goes back to f7.
Yeah, we had this position twice now already. And now finally moved the pawn. But g5 comes. Then I'm cutting your king.
The king cannot go in front.
Yeah, and without the king, there's no chance. And here again, it was very important to go to e7. If you go to g7, we will have these problems with
rook f5, perhaps.
Yes, rook f5. We will have that. No, then you have rook f5 is good. After e4, we will just go f4. So we have two passed pawns, and we will stop your pawn.
Yeah, and these pawns are very strong together. So king e7, rook h6.
Yeah, king f7, and now of course you just keep the rooks on the board, and now check. And yes, this again, you're attacking on f3, and that's what we were saying, that white cannot give this pawn on f3 because it will always be a draw.
It's always a draw. If you have when there's only a g pawn or a b pawn, if you have the king in front of it over here and you have your rook on the 8th rank, then it's always a draw. You can just basically go around with the rook. As long as the king stays on g8 or h8, it's always going to be a draw.
Yeah,
so that is a good endgame.
Yeah, we can show it maybe later on. I think we'll get into it if you want to.
Yeah, we can show that, exactly. So, but the idea here is that rook h3 is not possible because there's e4, and then the rook is going to be
it's pinned.
It's pinned, so you cannot take over here, so you cannot really defend. So f4, it takes f4, and now they took a draw in this position. But we can just show very quickly that if rook takes f4, king g8,
you have king g6, you go king h6. And
King anywhere.
King h6. And what you do, you can give it check first also if you want. Or
Sorry, you go rook a6 check.
It doesn't matter, g6 and g6. And now what you do, you just go back. You can go back, but you can also go rook a8. I just want to show this. You go rook f7, and you go rook. You wait with the rook b8, and you give check. And now it's very important where you go. You have
to go to h8.
So the king cannot enter.
Because if you go king f8, there's king h7, and then there's rook g8, and this is winning.
But you just keep the king in front of the other king. You give check, and here you see that with the G, H, B, and A pawn, you can always play with a passive rook. And it's just good to know that, because this is the easiest way to defend. Yeah. Nothing to think about. You just put
So now you know everything about this endgame. Now you'll never lose this if you're a pawn down against the B or G pawn, because it's the same thing with these both knight pawns.
And with the pawn H and A, of course, also.
But this was a great game as well. Very interesting how we saw this exchange sacrifice, and how, well, this was a really this was a fighting game. It wasn't a boring draw. They fought until the very, very, very end. So this was a fantastic game. In a fantastic round one. All the games were so amazing. All the games that we saw, there could not have been a better round one. We are going to be doing a recap for round number 2 as well. So stay tuned for that. We're so excited that the candidates are having such amazing games.
Absolutely. Yeah. I am really, I'm surprised, but it's been so wonderful to see this game and see what they are giving. And they are not playing boring chess. They're playing so exciting games, so exciting openings, new ideas. And so I'm very much looking forward to the next round later today.
I am looking forward to that too. We will be doing a video for that, so stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this this round 1 recap. And yeah, we will see you for round number 2. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.